Welcome to the Mobile Group. Appreciate everyone's attendance. It's pretty awesome. We got a pretty good crowd here for John. Couple opening remarks. By the way, I'm Tony. I am from 8Bot. We have an organization. We do a lot of API and mobile/web custom development. So right now we're not hired, but we are getting very close to hiring again. So we're pretty busy, which is good. But if anybody has any questions about anything at all, let us know. We're sponsoring tonight's event, 8Bot is. Just for some housekeeping, right outside the door to the right is the men's room. Looking to see if there's any females in here. If anybody wants to use the women's room, that would not be appropriate. So, with that said, the other thing I wanted to point out is Evolve is coming October 6th through the 10th in Atlanta. Mike, who can raise his hand in the back there, those of you that have been here the last few months know Mike well. He is actually presenting on Wednesday morning, first thing and possibly again. So we don't know what time to do like presentation.
We'll be there for training Tuesday, so if anybody goes for training, this is the L and that on Wednesday.
All right, so with that said, thanks, Mike. So with that said, anyways, anything else that you want us to point out here before John's going?
No, actually, I'm going to reset this, but please keep going. You might want to
Okay.
about bonus.
Oh, congratulations to Bernard back there, who won the F# competition for from Xamarin.
Did you have the
Awesome.
only submission? Or?
I won't ask that about how many people submitted actual submission. I used to do that. That was rude. I did not say that. All right, and next month, by the way, we'll be back here again. If anybody has an organization other than West Monroe in this room that wants to sponsor next month, that would be awesome. We're looking for sponsors for next month. We'll figure something out there, though. So yeah, we'll be right back here again next month, and our presentation, I believe, is it on F# next month, or is that two
Next month is, well, there's two next month. One's on Azure. One's these
Azure
like
Mobile Services.
Oh, Azure, right. That's
combined
services, right? Yeah.
And that's a combined one with the Chicago's Azure group. Not read yet. This one's on that, so that's good. We'll take packages. And then at the end of the month, we have a regular one, which is on Ivy Group. Ivy Max. John will be presenting that. So.
Gotcha. All right, so without further ado,
Well, with slight further ado, because it's
not counting technology. So John from West Monroe is a lead in this organization with us, and he's going to be talking about stuff. I should not say perfect. We good?
I think we
All right, so again, no further ado, here's John to tell you guys a little bit about MVVMCross. Thanks, John.
Okay, so welcome to our meetup. I'm going to be presenting on building cross-platform data applications with MVVMCross and Xamarin. I can introduce myself to start off with. Like Tony said, I'm an architect and I'm a technology technologist, West Monroe partner. I lead our mobility solutions group. Been doing mobile development since like 2003 on old Pocket PC stuff. So we've been doing mobile for a while. I lead our mobile team, so I have a hand in all of our Windows Phone and Android and iOS projects, as we do a lot of neighborhood as well. So a little bit about Western Oak Partners. We're a full-service technology consulting firm headquartered here in the Loop. We've got about 350 consultants across 8 offices around North America, New York and LA, Orvis, Dallas, Minneapolis, Montreal, Canada, etc. And then so we do probably about 30% management and business consulting and 50% technology consulting. Probably can't do that. So that's Western Row in a nutshell. And then we are hiring just a small handful of technical roles across just about every technical competency you can imagine. .NET, mobile, iOS, Android, Xamarin, for all those skills. SharePoint, Salesforce, Microsoft, Business Intelligence, Server, and then a whole host of infrastructure and desk related positions as well. And some of these positions, you see developers, consultant developers, local positions, travel, there's some internal development positions, kind of entry level, and then we have kind of traveling consulting positions as well. So if you know anybody that's looking, or you are looking, talk to me or talk to one of the Western Road guys in the middle row here. So yeah. Without further ado, so who is not familiar with Xamarin? I know a couple new faces. Okay, cool. So I'm not going to hit Xamarin too much. Mostly going to focus on MVVMCross, but I will run through this real quick. For the purpose of this presentation, just assume that Xamarin lets you build iOS and Android applications using C# and so it's pretty straightforward. The apps can be filed down to a native binary, and they're exactly the same as any other native application in terms of look and feel and performance. You still use the native iOS and Android APIs. They're just mapped into nice-looking .NET classes, so it's very similar to doing regular C# development. You get the bulk of the .NET framework you use in your applications, based on stuff that makes sense, the client profile. And you can still use all your favorite Objective-C and Java libraries. And then you get to use Visual Studio or Xamarin Studio on the Mac as your IDE. So that's Xamarin in a nutshell. That's not the right. We'll go through this first. That's right. I moved the slide. So cross-platform media architecture. We talked about this a little bit over the past 2 meetings. Mike kind of went through this, but to recap real quick, the idea is you want to share all this code, right? Your business logic, your domain classes, your web services code, database code, all this stuff needs to be shared across all platforms. And if you're building a native app, though, you want to have a UI that looks like the native UIs do. So follow the paradigms of iOS or Android. You want to have an Android app that looks like an iOS app or something like that. I think it's a terrible practice. All this shared code, then, you put this in Microsoft Portable Class Libraries, which came out this year. And basically, Portable Class Libraries basically, if you set one up before, we went over this in the last meetup, but you create Portable Class Libraries, you say, okay, I want this class library to be limited to these certain platforms, so Android and iOS and Xbox or Silverlight or Windows Phone. And then it kind of pairs down the APIs to just the ones that you can use to make sure that you don't write any code that doesn't work across the platform. So it just prevents you from writing, it just makes sure you adhere to code that's going to work across platforms. So this stuff goes in PCLs. Then you've also got the platform-specific code here. Besides the UI, the UI is going to be platform-specific. The other platform-specific code is stuff where the APIs are different across platforms, like Bluetooth is a really good example, and the sensors, the accelerometer, and stuff is a good example. There is no one API for Bluetooth. It's completely different set of calls across every platform. So that's where you're going to have some platform-specific UI, and we'll go over that as well, how you can have basically a single interface to work with to do platform-specific code, but still use platform-specific implementations for some of these things. That's one thing that MVVMCross helps with. Any questions about just how cross-platform native apps go together? Okay. So MVVMCross. MVVMCross helps you, gives you a structure to build the cross-platform native apps. So MVVMCross is an open source MVVM framework, and it works for Xamarin iOS, Android, Windows Phone, WinRT, Mac, WPF, and I think there's more than that now. Unity, other stuff. It's all open source, so people are adding new targets to it all the time. The core, what does it give you? What it really is the MVVMCross framework. It gives you the MVVM plumbing, the base infrastructure. So you model classes you inherit from, and it gives you kind of a platform-specific implementation that lets you work with the MVVM pattern, which I'll also explain here in a bit. Data binding is a large part of the MVVMCross framework. So just code that lets you marry your view models up to your views in a very simple, declarative way for the most part. It saves a lot of code. Really easy, one line of code to do a lot of the data binding. It would need a lot more usually. It gives you a nice IoT version of control and dependency injection framework as well that works cross-platform. So that's nice because you need the IoT and the dependency injection to do what we were talking about with the platform-specific code. So on iOS, you want to get, say you're doing Bluetooth. On iOS, you want to get your iOS Bluetooth manager, whatever you want to call your class. On Android, you want to get the Android Bluetooth manager. You need dependency injection for that. And then plugins is another huge part of MVVMCross. So it makes the cross-platform development a lot easier by taking those things like Bluetooth. Actually, there is no Bluetooth plugin, but accelerometer, files, SQLite. I have a list on the next slide, but it takes those things, wraps them in a common API then that works across all of the platforms. So then you just have one set of code to call. If you want to do sound, we were talking about the sound effect thing earlier, they have a sound plugin. Then on Windows Phone, if you use sound effect, on Android, they use whatever, and iOS, they use core audio or something. So that's a really nice part of MVVMCross as well. You can use the plugins without even using MVVMCross, actually. So then just kind of the key components of MVVMCross. You've got your view models, you've got your views, you've got a presenter. So the pattern is almost kind of like model view, view model, presenter, because you need a platform-specific presenter to tell the platform how to display your views, basically your view models. So that's platform-specific. And you can have custom logic in there for doing more complex navigation, basically. And then if you've done a lot of WPF or Windows 8 or Windows Phone development, Silverlight, iNotify, property changed, and the Windows I command are very useful things to know about as well. So just a list of the MVVMCross plugins. There's one for almost everything. These are all things that are different across platforms. So making phone calls, SQLite, threading, all that stuff is different across platforms. So it helps a lot. Gives you a yeah, go ahead.
Did you just say, and that's what you said, that simply put, Xamarin has cross-platform, but there are certain parts of Xamarin that you have to use custom APIs.
Exactly.
MVVMCross makes it so that you don't have to even do that part. It makes it standard.
Yeah.
What you just said?
Yeah. Okay. Especially for the cross-platform stuff, the stuff that's different on each platform. Yeah, it gives you that. So, very nice.
this streaming kind of library, how it is,
I haven't seen, yeah, the video playing is different across each platform. That's different on each platform. Streaming and stuff, I'm not really sure. There's it's probably standard .NET networking stuff for streaming, but the video playing itself, that's definitely different across all platforms. Okay, why would you use MVVMCross? Xamarin lets you build cross-platform applications. What's the point? Share more code is probably the biggest benefit. It lets you share this layer that's kind of underneath the user interface. So, standard Xamarin cross-platform apps, you share maybe 50, 65% of the code. It usually depends on how complex your user interface is, but business logic, data access, domain classes, that stuff's usually about half of your code. The UI is the other half. MVVMCross lets you get more in the range of 75, 85, 90% code reuse, because it takes a lot of logic out of the UI, out of the user interface, and puts it in these kind of shareable view models. And I'll show you what these look like here in a second. The MVVM pattern, it helps you enforce, it's just a good pattern overall if you use it before. It helps you really enforce keeping UI concerns separate from business logic. So a good way to, if you're working in a team, not everybody always knows exactly what's going on with the architecture. So it's a good way to keep those two things separate, separate concerns. Like I said, it takes care of a lot of code for you. A lot of plumbing code is taken care of with the data binding. I mean, I'm talking 100 lines of code boiled down to 1 line of code for MVVMCross data binding. So that's very, very nice. That's a good feature on its own. I mean, we use MVVMCross even if we're just building an app for iPad only or iOS only, basically, just because some of these benefits. The data binding is a really nice benefit, a lot better than just the out of the box, what you get with iOS and Xamarin. Really good for team development, like I mentioned. A good example is we had a project where we were porting a Windows mobile application to iPad, and we were working with the client's development team, and they had a handful of people who had never done iOS before. There's definitely a learning curve to iOS if you've never done it. But what we could do then is have those guys work on the view models, which doesn't require any knowledge whatsoever of iOS or Android or anything. It's just C# classes. And it's just a representation of what the UI should look like. So you have the guys never done iOS before working on view models, and you can have your iOS and your Android pros building the user interfaces and the guts of your application. So really nice for team development, especially if you have people that don't know the platforms. It also helps you get consistency between the UI behavior in your applications. Not consistent UI across platforms, but the UI is going to work the same. You click this button, and you go to another page. You click this button, it does a calculation. So that's going to be consistent across all your platforms. Very extensible, open source. You can plug in just about any point in the framework and change how it works. That's very useful. And it has a very active in the community, very active maintainer. It's created by this guy, Stuart Lodge. He's a Brit as well, and really helpful guy. He's on IRC to help with any issues, and he works on this stuff basically every day. So great support. Well, a handful of resources, just where to learn more about MVVMCross. The guy, Stuart Lodge, he did there's like 30 videos. 44 videos. Just how to do pretty much everything there is with MVVMCross. There's a video for pretty much each separate part. His blog, MVVMCross, goes up on GitHub, and thank God MVVMCross is in NuGet. You can see all the packages there. It's got plugins there. It's got all kinds of good stuff.
When did that happen? That's recent.
Yeah. I think it's as of a couple months ago it got added in NuGet because I'll show you that in a second. But thank God it's in NuGet because it's very easy to set up now.
Yeah, because we know if anything can happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and it used to take like, I don't know, the first time I set up MVVMCross, it took a day. It takes a really long time to get all the DLLs right. They've simplified it a lot since then, but you get now, you'll see a demo here in a second, just kind of right click, get MVVMCross into the application. So a lot easier to set up. So who is not familiar with the MVVM pattern? Everybody's done MVVM? I know you MVVM pattern. Just real quick then. So how it works. The view sends commands. I don't know why there's an error here. The view sends commands to the view model. The view model does stuff with your model. And your model in this case is your business logic, your domain classes, your data access, pretty much anything is your model. Anything that's not the UI of. View sends commands to the view model maybe makes a service call, database call, get some data back. You would then update a property on your view model. It'll send an event to the view and say, hey, this, I don't know, my password field changed or something. Hey, this field got updated, okay, do the data binding, give me that updated field, and then the view finds the data. So this graphic is pulled straight off of MCN. And the view is basically anything that is the UI. So on iOS, it's the view controller. On Android, it's the activity or fragment. And on Windows Phone, it's a control or page or window example. And then includes your data binding code, the code that kind of glues the view model to the view. So that includes the code behind your .NET code. The view model is basically just responsible for coordinating all the communication between the view and your model. It varies the view up to the model. You can have view models that talk to each other as well. You can, with MVVMCross, you can, a view model doesn't have to necessarily correlate exactly to a screen. You can have multiple, you can compose your view models, multiple view models into a single screen basically. So you can have view models that talk to each other. And the view models are also responsible for the navigation between other view models. So one view model is going to say, okay, when you click this button, go to another view model. I talked about the model already. Demo time. So before we get started on the demo, any questions? Okay.
Actually, I see that there's a plugin up there for SQLite.
Yeah.
How does it manage that? Because are those plugins platform specific? Are they?
Some of them are, yeah. I don't know if every single plugin is Android, iOS, Windows Phone, but I think that one is.
SQLite is like this one. I was just asking.
No.
It uses a third-party SQLite.
Okay.
Because SQLite's not on Windows Phone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's tapping. Yeah. It just pulls it to a separate DLL.
Yeah. That's how that works.
So you think you're doing SQLite trick.
Okay. So demo. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to set up a basic MVVMCross solution. And then I'm going to walk through an app that we're building with MVVMCross currently. So Xamarin Studio. So we'll back to that kind of cross-platform architecture. You'll have a core project that all of your different platform-specific application projects are going to reference. So we'll build the core project first. That's going to be a portable library, a PCL. Call this our core project. Okay. So we've got our core, and then we'll add an iOS project and an Android project. So Android application, mvxdemo.android. I'll add our iOS application. add an iPhone app to keep it simple. Okay, then I'm going to go through and let's see, we'll make our iOS app the startup project. Then we're going to go through and add MVVMCross in there. We'll do that from NuGet. So add package. I'm going to add it to all three, actually. And then NuGet behind the scenes is going to add, I don't know how this works, but it goes and it adds the right DLLs for iOS and it adds the right DLLs for Android and the right ones for the core project, and they're all different libraries. So it's got an iOS library, Android library, and it's got the portable stuff. No idea how they do that, but thank God, because it takes forever to set up otherwise. And you've got to fiddle around. Okay, that's what I figured, but yeah, it's magic. You'll see. So then there's a couple things in here when you look up MVVMCross. This is like a getting started package, this one, and it throws a lot of extra stuff into the project and kind of gives you the baby steps for creating it. So that's what we're going to use. This one is just the library, so this would be the equivalent of like an empty project without the getting started stuff. I'm going to add this guy. And you'll see it just magically create like a handful of folders and classes. So I added this kind of to-do folder. We'll look at that here in a second. So go add MVVMCross for all these other guys. Add it to the core. You see then you've got your MVVMCross libraries in here. Yeah, so then it adds the Android libraries and other good stuff in here. Okay. Next, so what I'm going to do is I'll build out kind of the basic stuff in iOS and get that running first, then I'll go back and do Android later. So it adds a to-do folder in here, and it gives you kind of some basic instructions for how to. Can you read that okay? Probably not. I just realized. Better? So step one is to add the reference from your iOS and Android project to your core project. So iOS needs to reference the core, and Android needs to reference the core as well. Okay. That's kind of step one. Then there's a handful of other steps here. A setup.cs file, the starter package, adds that for you. This is about all that ever goes in here, but you can add some stuff into this create app method to kind of set some things up before your app is the kind of container that contains your MVVM app is created. So this is sort of the starting point then on each platform. Then the app delegate, you change the app delegate to create your setup class, and then you call, you see MVVMCross abbreviated as MVX, and then it basically calls your MVVMCross app start, and that tells the platform, here's the very first view I want to look at. So the app delegate, very standard empty app delegate here. This is the starting point for an iOS application. And what I'm going to do is just grab this stuff out of here and drop it in here. So what you see here is it creates the setup class that we just looked at, calls initialize on it, which does some magic inside MVVMCross, and then you create an MVX app start here, and call start on it. These all these references. Good. Then back to the to-do. Add a views folder and a view, and change the view controller to inherit from MVX view controller. So we've got it created the first view for us, and it already inherits from MVX view controller. So in iOS then, normally this is a UI view controller, and then if you're doing MVVMCross, all of your view controllers will inherit from MVX view controller, which gives you some more functionality. And then the view did load in there, then you basically add the data binding. So that's already done in there as well. So we've got our basic data binding code in here. This just kind of creates the UI programmatically in here and then adds bindings to it. So we'll take a look at the view model that it creates. Make sure there's no to-dos in here. Yeah, so then in this is the core project now. Can this part get, can also get zoomed in, I think. Oh yeah. Okay. So in the core application then, your app class that gets created in here is kind of your starting point of your MVVMCross application. And this basically says the first view model is going to be the first screen that shows up. This is some of the inversion of control here, and it says basically any class ends with a service at the end is going to be created as a lazy loaded singleton. So I'm not going to use that, but we'll leave the code there. The first view model, this is really basic. Hello world. I don't want that. We're going to do a pretty simple example that just shows how the MVVM pattern works. So I'm going to create a property called counter. And good stuff. And then when you do the setter, then you set it just like normal. Counter good value. Then when this changes, we want to let the view know that it changed. So then you call raise property changed, and this is your iNotify property changed piece here. You look at yeah. So raise property changed. Counter is the property that changed. So there's your property that will bind to the UI, and then we'll do a command then to communicate with the UI, or to communicate with the view model. So you'll create these commands whenever you want the view to tell the view model to do something. And it looks like a property, right? It is. Let's see how this works. Yeah, it's and then iCommand is system.windows.input. But then this is actually going to be MVX command, and this will do another anonymous delegate. Oops. So whenever the increment counter command gets called, it's going to increment the counter. Then in our view, our iOS view, we're going to change this. We don't need, it adds a label and a text box. I'm going to create a button here. set the position of this button. Our button added into the UI now. And then this here is the MVVMCross data binding code. So it creates a binding set here, and this says basically create a binding between my first view, this class, and my first view model. And then it says bind the label to the hello property, which we want to be counter. And then you can even bind the button. So the default is it's going to when it gets clicked, it's going to call this command, our increment counter command. Okay, so hopefully everything builds.
Is it intelligent enough to filter out only showing the high commands if you're doing a button, or showing properties when you're doing a label?
No, it's not. It's not, because they're both properties. The command and the thing are properties. So it's smart enough to filter out. If you're finding a button, will it do commands and will it do properties? It's definitely not that smart. Oh yeah, so that what I forgot here. This needs to be a MVX application delegate instead of the default one. Oh man, I knew nobody's catching my bugs. Yeah, that's your job. You gotta let me know if I code any bugs there. Okay, everything built. So run this guy. Actually, and then we'll wait. My emulator battery is getting low.
Oh, yeah, emulator battery.
Yeah. Oh. All right. So the battery lasted an hour from full, and I just got replaced. Apple.
You have to use the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So maybe it would have lasted a half hour then. Okay. All right. So yeah, this came up. So and it doesn't work. So we can find out why. So then we can debug here and see. Oh, I know why. I have a good idea why it didn't work. So let's set a breakpoint here. I'm guessing it's because I didn't set this to 0. It could be.
You have to actually access
What?
when you do your internet,
Oh yeah, that's right. That's why it doesn't work. Good call. Yeah, cause so it's just incrementing the private one and not the public one, so it's not calling raise property change then. Good catch. There we go. So then you'll see it'll go through here and it'll hit the setter here. It'll set the value and then it'll call raise property changed, and it's incremented. So very exciting demo, I know, but yeah. So that's the MVVM pattern and how to use it on iOS. Now we'll do the same thing on Android. We've got our Android project. Again, there's a handful of to-dos. So same thing, add a reference to your core project, create our setup.cs. Looks exactly the same as iOS. Add the NVX binding attributes file. So this is something that gets put in. This gets put in here, and this basically gives you all of your data binding syntax for Android. Add a splash screen. It does that for you. So here's our this will be kind of our Android. This will be our Android splash screen. And then the other to do is get rid of the main activity. Get rid of this guy. This gets added by Xamarin. And then add your views and your first view. So this is our view. And then if you've done Android development, you know then that the actual the view presentation stuff is all under your layout folder and your AXML. That's not what I wanted to do. So to get IntelliSense on the Android layouts, you got to do open with source code editor. So then very standard Android layout stuff here, but you see this local MVX bind. This is how you do the declarative data binding on Android. So this is very similar to Windows Phone or Windows RT or XAML, actually, I guess. It's just declarative data binding, so no code to marry your view model up to your view, which is really nice. Unfortunately, you can't do that on iOS. So iOS, your data binding is all programmatic. It all looks like this. Create my bindings here in code, which is nice. It's strongly typed, but this is a little bit cleaner, I think. So same thing here. We'll modify our view to add a button instead of another text box. That. Then the binding here, syntax is a little different. You say click and the name of the method. So it binds the click event to the increment counter command. This binding says it's going to bind text to the hello property, or is it called counter? I'm pretty sure that's it for this guy. Now, we make this our startup project. Make Android our startup project. And then, yeah, of course, so my emulator isn't appearing. So now what I'll do is save. Huh? Yeah, it's running. It's just what?
What do you want latest and greatest?
Not beta or alpha.
Okay, so go to your browser.
Yeah. The manage engine.
Remember the refresh button, like,
Really? And then it'll show up? Okay, because restarting is the only way I got it to show up. Okay, I see it.
I'll tell you what I have to like look at the things it up out there, actually get it. I know we can tell that, but like, we can load it up the, we can load it up the logo. I just like all the stuff done like that. I it's still very limited compared with.
I haven't got this one to work, so I just closed Xamarin Studio, I'll reopen it. They know that's an issue? Oh, good. I guess you probably run into it every other day.
Yeah, it's a virtual box, and it actually activates it. Yeah.
So we'll give Xamarin Studio a minute while it closes. And we'll reopen it.
I mean, it's intelligence close.
Uh-oh. Solution back up. Okay. So one thing is that I gotta change the API level on this. I just gotta back it down one. I didn't create a Genymotion full point for it. It's API level 18. So hopefully, okay, good to go. Now Genymotion shows up here, so now we should be able to run it. All 4 gigs of RAM in here are working as hard as possible. Huh? No, no SSD either. This is old MacBook. I don't know. I don't use the Mac as my primary, so I get the loaner. If I'd be fast too. Okay, so it's finally deploying. Yeah, all right, so there's our Android version. Using all the don't clap. That's not worthy of clapping. But it is. So, but it's all using the same view model. So imagine this is. I'll show you another application here in a second. I mean, imagine this is a 1,000-line long view model, a huge, very complex page. Use your imagination, you can see how much code you save. Pretend this is an extremely complex financial calculation, and you get why this is useful.
You only made the counter once.
Yeah.
And it went to both
So you got the iOS screen, the Android screen, and they're both on the core view model.
So that's why you said pretend is a complex by that.
Yeah, pretend the plus plus is like, you know,
Data science.
mortgage calculation or something. So maybe yeah, I wouldn't fit in here, Jason. Okay, so yeah, basic demo. I'm also going to show how to navigate to another view. Didn't want to do that. So we'll create a second view model. And this is just, like I said earlier, it's a basic C# class. Yeah, sure.
You wrote the counter in the core,
Yeah.
or in iOS, or the core?
The core.
Okay, so the core is where all.
The core is where all the shared code goes.
And then, okay.
Yep. So now we've got a second view model. This has to be an MVX view model. Okay, and then I'm only going to do this on iOS. On iOS, then we'll create a second view. So we'll just add an iPhone view controller. This will be second view. Okay, so now I've got our nib and our code behind here. So we'll open up our nib and add a label to it. And we'll wait while that beach balls. So for those not familiar with Xamarin, when you work, if you've done iOS, your nibs or your storyboards, your XIVs are your user interface files. So what it's doing right now is it's going to open the nib file in Xcode for editing, for designing, and then I'll make some changes to it in Xcode. I'll save it, and then when you go back to Xamarin Studio, it syncs those changes that you made in Xcode up with what you have in Xamarin Studio, if it ever opens. Okay, Xcode. Okay. Still loading. Yep. Wait for it. Okay. 10 minutes later, I've got a label. 2 labels. Yeah. Bonus label. Okay, so I'll save this. Hopefully, this is actually done. And then when you close this and go back to Xamarin Studio, theoretically it should. Why if you just add a label does it not pull back the changes? You have to edit the outlet before it. Okay. So if you just make visual changes, then it's not gonna. It doesn't sync the changes back to Xamarin Studio. Right. Right. So Anyways, the code to go to the other view model is very simple. We're just going to change our button. I'll change this to, I don't know, navigate next. This, instead of incrementing our counter, we're going to call show view model. This is a method that you get in the MVX view model class. Show view model. Oh, geez. Show view model. Second view model. And then you can see you can pass some parameters to your next view model. If you want to pass some data to your next view model, it needs to display context, something like that. And this will navigate pretty much straight to the second view in iOS. I'm not going to demo it because it's going to take 10 minutes to start the emulator again. But if I click the button, it'll go to the next view, but it'll be blank because Xcode didn't sync the changes fast. So you can imagine how that works. So show view model is how you do all the navigation in MVVMCross, no matter what it is. Whether you're showing a modal dialog or you're going to another page, everything is show view model. I don't know, how do you dismiss a modal, I think? Yeah. Or, well, actually the modal dismissal is not show. Actually, no, we do that with show view model too.
Well, effectively, basically just show view model.
Yeah.
But does it stay in the background?
The modal, I don't think so. No, it knows to dismiss it basically. If you call show view model from the modal, it will
So,
MVVMCross will handle dismissing it.
Essentially, what we're talking about is what the customer is like. We're talking about also how to do it. And that involves the preserver, which is not very, which much more complicated.
So
Yeah.
this is an example of a modal. So if you're navigating to another.
Yeah, and this is a modal. This will just go between one view controller to the next. So this is just the most basic scenario. There's other parameters and things you can pass. So it'll be modals and popovers and other kind of stuff as well. So I'm not going to get into that much. So now I'll show you. Any questions about the basic demo?
So,
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
MVVMCross is basically the wraparound Androids with DLLs, things like that. How does it handle memory utilization on those individual devices? Because again, it's generating its own options underneath that too. And how is it actually playing up? You have to know about that.
You do, but so it's not MVVMCross. It's the Xamarin stuff that is doing exactly what you said, creating its own objects and everything. And as I understand it, it still does all the .NET garbage collection to get rid of your dangling object references and everything, right? Yeah. So it still does all the standard .NET garbage collection inside its own VM. Yeah.
That unless it's a wrapper from like C++ or something, it's always in the garbage collection. Unless it's wrapped from a language and doesn't have native automatic garbage collection.
Right. So iOS just has the automatic reference counting, I believe. So this takes care of a lot of the memory management stuff for you as well. Xamarin does. It has nothing to do with MVVMCross, but if you haven't used Xamarin before and you've done a lot of Objective-C stuff, you know, deal with a lot of memory leaks and things like that. Xamarin, I don't know. I think I've chased down a memory leak maybe once. Pretty rare. It's the same. If you have a memory leak in Xamarin, it's the same kind of stuff you do in .NET that causes a memory leak. Dangling event handlers, things like that. Okay, so then I'll show you a more complex solution. So this is an app that we're working on internally at West Monroe. This is our time entry application. So West Monroe has a custom-built time entry application. If you've done consulting, you know you got to enter your time every day so you can bill your clients. So we built a Xamarin-based client for our time entry system. Works across iOS and Android. Working on the Windows Phone version right now. or halfway. It works halfway across Android. Hopefully it'll open. Yeah, I think Google Hangouts definitely eating some memory. Okay. So WM project, Western North project. Same deal here. You got our core project, our iOS, and our Android project. Familiar structure. And what is important to show here? So let's look at some of our view models first. You can see what a more complex view model looks like. So login is a good example. You've got maybe let me run this at the same time here. So if you look at this view model, you see there's properties for like your username, your password, our property change events. This is like the remember me. And then you get stuff like your errors and your loading indicators and things like that. So you've got an is busy property. That's going to get bound to the view to say whether or not to show the progress spinner or not, for example. So literally everything in your UI is tied back to the view models. The app I was telling you about with where we ported the Windows Mobile to iPad, that was MVVMCross. That was a cross-language application, globalized application, so all different languages. So all the text and all the labels and everything came from the view model because they had to get pulled out of resource files. So pretty much everything in the UI is in your view model. So you got your this is like, is there an error or not? Do we need to show an error? This is probably bound to visibility of the error message. And you've got a login error message. I don't know why I have two error messages. This is probably a valid. Okay, all right. And you've got your login command. And this, you saw, I was doing kind of the shorthand with the anonymous, but best practice is normally to go call a private method with these. Yeah. Sure. So we created a web service on the back end, and then it just uses Active Directory for the authentication. But through a web service called up. Yeah. So it's just a custom web service, nothing special. It passes the username and password and puts it up against Active Directory and tells you whether or not it failed. Gives you a token back, token-based authentication. Let's see. Yep. So, and I forgot. This doesn't scroll in the emulator for some reason. I don't know. Scrolling is broken on my emulator, or in this app at least. But basically, you can see each day in the period, which is every 2 weeks for us, and then you can see kind of the different projects that you worked on. So I worked on the WM Project iPhone app for 3 hours today, fixing Jason's code. I'm just kidding. I see all the way around actually. And then then you've got your time in here, and I worked 11 hours today apparently. I logged out. Yeah, something like. It goes back through the video and gets my password. So this is the login view model. So you got your busy indicator down there, everything, and all wired up. And this with the modal, this is actually one view model, I think, right? I'm not. Okay, so another long story, but a lot of times you would do this as a separate view model from the other one, but we did do this in one view model for this guy. Okay, so yeah, the login We've got C# async await stuff on here. I call our authentication method asynchronously, and so here's the actual call to the login. Oh, and then one good thing to show. So we save the username and password locally, right? Generally on a mobile device, you don't want to just like save your username and password to like a text file or something like that. You want to save it to the keychain on iOS, where nobody theoretically can get to it. Same thing on Android and Windows phones. So the keychain or secure storage, whatever you want to call it, that's also totally separate code on each platform. So we've got this authentication manager then where we save the credentials, and I'll show you how that works. So for the authentication manager, this is a good example of what I was talking about with like Bluetooth, where it's different across each platform. So you create an interface for it then. So this is your iAuthentication manager, and it has some properties on it that you need to implement here. And then on iOS, the authentication manager uses the keychain, and it looks like this. So then this is the actual iOS implementation then. So this is the iOS code to save stuff to the keychain. This isn't an active directory. This is just saving stuff to a secure location on the device is all it's doing. You save the password. This just saves it on the phone itself. Yeah. Just to pull it back up later and not save it someplace secure. So this is all very iOS-centric code. You're not going to be able to use this on Android. And then on Android then, so again, you've got your interface in the core project. You have the iOS-specific implementation here. In Android, you look at the authentication manager. You see it's following the same pattern, but then you've got all crazy Android-centric stuff here for using what's called the key store on Android, which is totally different from iOS. Some crazy, this is calling some Java pointers and stuff to get this in here. Fun stuff. So totally separate implementation for saving things on Android. How do you tell Android then to use the Android Authentication Manager instead of the other one? That's all in here. So this is the dependency injection part then, and you basically say, whenever the Android app here is requesting an iAuthentication Manager, return our Android Authentication Manager. Give me an Android Authentication Manager whenever I ask for an iAuthentication Manager. And same thing on, this is the setup class in the iOS project. Same thing here. If I ask for an iAuthentication Manager, give me the iOS Authentication Manager. So a good example of how to do platform-specific code while you just keep a single interface then. So then you look at the login view model, which calls this, and this code is all cross-platform then. So it's all making the same calls to your authentication manager, just doing it completely differently on each platform. What else? Some more view model stuff. You can see this is the very complex view model. So you can see here, we've got a handful of properties here. You've got like the dates up at the top, and you've got your time entries. These are like the projects we work on and the tasks on those projects, and you've got these dates up at the top. So this is all that stuff here. You see, these are just getters though. So the view just grabs these, and the view never sets these directly. But what happens on this view is when I change the date here, you'll see these are my time entries for Monday, Tuesday. This stuff is rebinding each time. So how this one works is the date property is exposed. And then when you set the selected date, it's going to go and it's going to roll through here, and it's going to say, okay, now update this and update these again to change the colors, and update this down here. So it's going to say update the selected date, update the time entries, this whole list of stuff. I forget what that one is, and then update the total time down here. So all of these properties will change when the selected date changes. Again, so saving your time entry then, we've got some async await in here on the save method, so that also makes the code very clean. Yeah. There's a lot less, not in this part, but yeah. So let's look at that. You know, in an iOS view, we're looking at the time entry view here. So you have all, so the data binding stuff is all in here. So this is all data binding from here on down. So a little bit more complex data binding. And this is nice. If you've done iOS before, it's a pain to bind a collection of objects to a table view. It's a lot of code to do that normally. MVVMCross makes that like one line of code here and does all the plumbing for you. So if you've worked with table view controllers a lot, this is a godsend. So a lot of code on iOS for this. Android, we go and look at that view. Right. Resources. And our time entry view. Yeah. So all the data binding code that was a couple hundred lines of code on iOS, it's just a couple bonus lines of code in your standard Android layout. So a lot cleaner on Android, a little easier to use. Yep. Yeah, all declarative. Then. Yeah. So. Trying to think of what else is worth showing. In any other questions? Anything anybody wants to see?
The last couple of dissertation parts of the dissertation, we were talking about the great app that you made. If you could explain how MVVMCross was connected to it. You know, I know the whole thing is MVVMCross creation, but what was the direct correlation of MVVMCross?
Yep. So if you were doing, so MVVMCross, the part that MVVMCross gives you is this, to do the declarative data binding in your layouts. The view models, so this gives you the plumbing to do all the view model. And all the navigation code is all behind the scenes. So it gives you the view model, and it gives you, so this is more dependency injection. We're in the core project here. Your app, like I said, this is kind of like the starting point for your whole MVVMCross application. You see in here, there's a handful of dependency injection calls here that say, okay, if I want a project repository, give me a SOAP project service project repository. So it sets all that up here. So this is what MVVMCross gives you dependency injection as well. The other things it gives you is the plugins, like I talked about. So actually, Authentication Manager, when we started developing this a couple months ago, this is kind of an off and on project for us as we get time. Somebody just created the iOS Authentication Manager. There actually is a MVVMCross plugin that already does keychain stuff, so you actually don't have to write this one custom. But we kept it that way. Yeah, so we just kept it this way to keep with implementation. Yeah, it is. I was glad it was in there because I didn't want to have to go demo. Let me go. Yeah, Bluetooth or something. Any other questions about Xamarin, MVVMCross?
I have a off-topic question.
Yeah, sure. That's fine. Okay, maybe it's okay.
You moved off topic. You said that you work with XNA deeply. What do you think MVVC has anything to do with Mono?
Yeah, so, XNA, Xamarin and Mono Game is kind of the replacement for XNA, right?
Yeah.
So Mono Game is just all 2D. You're writing that code is going to work. It outputs it to basically a drawing 2D canvas in Mono Game, and that's easy to replicate. Okay, pixel number 1 goes to pixel number 1 on iOS and Android and Windows Phone. That's pretty easy to go cross-platform. You're just pushing
pixels. Have
pixels.
like a screen manager so that it has the reader sides.
No, it's kind of handled by all of the platform stuff.
I'll do that.
Oh yeah, that's fine. That's fine. So then this, though, on Mono Game, your screen is the same. Your game is going to be the same across iPhone and Android and Windows Phone and PlayStation and whatever else. This, you want to have UI that looks like Android on Android, looks like iOS on iOS, and so forth. So, on Mono Game, you're sharing 100% of your code, except for things that are like the sound effects and the stuff where you have platform-specific code. Say if you're going to do a game that has Bluetooth or something, right? That code is going to be different per platform. This is just about the same thing, except your UI is going to be different across all the different libraries, and that is what MVVMCross gives you the ability to do while you're still trying to keep that kind of common core of your code the same. Yep. Any other questions?
How do you think MVVMCross is going to be affected by Xamarin?
So Xamarin Forms versus MVVMCross. That's a good question too. So if you've seen Xamarin Forms lets you have the same UI across all your different platforms, and it kind of works the same way. They draw the stuff on there. I don't know exactly how it works, magic, but it puts you declare your UI elements. It gives you the lowest common denominator of UI between all three platforms. So your standard toolbox stuff, buttons, text fields, labels, grids, what have you. And then it displays those in a generic way across all platforms. If you're doing Xamarin Forms, I don't know if Xamarin Forms works with MVVMCross or not, but you would be able to share your view models though with your generic Xamarin Forms. So they're different tools for different jobs. Xamarin Forms, if you want to have the same UI across all your different platforms. MVVMCross, if you want to have different UIs. There's nothing saying either that you have to use MVVMCross for Xamarin either. We kind of went over the benefits earlier, and it makes sense for a lot of scenarios. The main scenario for MVVMCross is if you're going to do cross-platform stuff and you want to share a lot of code.
I think the biggest leg up right now that MVVMCross has over Xamarin Forms, I've tried both of them, is the fact that Xamarin Forms is limited to just Android, iOS, and Silverlight Windows.
Oh yeah, right.
If you're going to do any kind of Windows Store apps, you're kind of going to have to go out.
That's a very good point. Yeah, that's a very good point. So Xamarin Forms is just those three platforms, whereas MVVMCross is open source. Make an Xbox view for it. I don't know, whatever you want, basically. Yeah. Yep, and it works in Mac and Windows Forms and WPF, and I was talking about with the Windows Mobile application. So we ported this 75,000 line Windows Mobile app to iPad. We didn't end up building MVVMCross support for Windows Mobile, but it was still able to share. Just basically take all that Windows Mobile code, C# from 10 years ago, and just use it as an API behind all the view models and everything, and then still share literally 85% of code between a Windows Mobile app that was built in 2003 and an iPad app built in 2013.
In terms of percentage of production-based apps that you've written using MVV and Cross. Can you give me an idea of what that looks like?
Yeah, so for us, we do probably, to start with, we probably do 80% iOS development anyways. So of that iOS development, we do probably 90% Xamarin development. That's us. That's our firm. It makes sense for us. Objective-C and Swift development makes sense for other projects, I'm sure. But of the Xamarin projects that we've done, lately, all of them for the past 2 years. So every iOS application we've done, even if it's just iOS, we've done MVVMCross for pretty much the past 2 years.
And the benefits of doing MVVMCross versus a purely iOS-based implementation, is it better, or what's your experience? I mean, if you're not doing something that's cross the platform, I don't know, does it still make sense to still do that?
Yeah.
The event that you
So, yep. Yeah. If you're gonna port to another platform, if you plan to go cross-platform, it's absolutely a good idea to start with MVVMCross. If you think you're just gonna build, there's definitely less benefits to MVVMCross if you're not gonna go cross-platform. But if you're not gonna go cross-platform, you still get an MVVM pattern. You can roll your own MVVM pattern. That's not that hard. Why waste time writing code that somebody else already spent millions of hours debugging? Give you the separation of UI concerns from business logic, so just better overall architecture, the data binding, and the plumbing code. Like I said, it's hundreds of lines of code to do some data bindings in iOS, where it gets boiled down to one line. The MVVMCross. So get this. This is kind of a part of this, separating your UI from your business logic, but it's so separated that you can have two people working on one screen, essentially. One guy works on the view, the UI part, one guy works on the view model. Yep. And then the plugins and stuff. It doesn't. It's a lot of the plugins wrap up a lot of very complex iOS features and boils that down to a simple API. So even if you're not doing cross-platform stuff, the plugins are still useful. They make some of the APIs a lot simpler to use on iOS. Yes.
Basic question. So the MVVM, I saw in your codes that the VM is an initializing the model.
The model or the view model?
Yeah, maybe we should go.
Okay.
Who gets created first?
So what gets created first? See in the app here that just creates the I'm in the core project. So in this one, in What's Remote project, the first view model is the splash view model. So that's what gets created first. So it'll instantiate this our splash screen view model, and then it'll say, okay, I've got the splash screen view model. What view then goes with this? I'm on Android, so it'll be the the splash screen view, and splash view. So then this will tie together with the splash screen view model in order to create the view second thing. So your kind of MVVMCross container creates the first view model, and then from there you have view models basically creating other view models.
And another thing is so when you use that authentication manager, and so you use with
yeah. So you can change how that works as well. So this, yep. Well, what this one is doing is it's calling this register singleton. So it'll actually only ever create one of these authentication managers. So it's just creating it right here, and that's the only time this authentication manager is ever going to get created, because the dependency injection stuff allows you to have this created as a singleton. So there'll only ever be one instance of this class. But you don't have to do that. There's a lot of other Yeah, there's a lot of other ones. There's a lot of other options. So you could say, give me a new one every time, etc.
Is there a reason why you're finding the endpoint address and
So they're too lazy to put it in plist or something. I don't know. It's just an easy point to just go ahead and switch between dev and production. I wouldn't put it there normally. But somebody put it in. I mean, you know, the alternative is put it, you know, in someplace else where it's kind of hard to find. So, yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, you guys found a situation where it's not a good idea. Where something super complicated and then accepting solutions.
I haven't found a situation yet, but I think if you had maybe a really complex drawn UI, that would be good. There's pretty, you know, like I said, there's limited usefulness if you're just doing a single platform. It could just make things more complex. If you had a team that wasn't more advanced, Xamarin, iOS developers, I might avoid it too. You might spend a lot of time hunting down MVVMCross issues.
MVVM issues.
If you combine MVVMCross and Xamarin, two extremely complex things, and then on top of that, iOS and Android, and it turns into a bug hunt sometimes, but it's not too bad. It's leaps and bounds better than it was 2 years ago. We started messing with MVVMCross January last year, and it was alpha at that point. We were using it in production, and it still worked pretty well. So it's gotten much improved since then.
This MVVM thing is mostly used in this kind of business line.
Yeah.
Like I saw this like in the newspaper and all that they use a data visualization about like thousands of data points. That's probably not. I'm assuming that's probably not good.
That might not be a good fit for this. You would probably blow up MVVMCross with events and things like that. So for something high performance, I don't know. I haven't had to do something that needed an extremely performant UI. So most of the business applications, you're right. So it's something like that might not be good either.
The D3, the JavaScript, is just a functional program. You just recreate the view each time.
Yeah.
Recreate, just call same function. So which is super.
Yeah. If you needed a highly performant UI, you never know what the data binding could be doing behind the scenes. There's probably more efficient ways to do it because it's probably if you change a collection. I don't know how smart MVVMCross is internally. Is it going to recreate the entire table, or is it going to go change just the one item that changed?
And raise that.
Yeah, it'll raise the property change event a million times, whatever you're doing.
The truth of that logic, that actually code was actually was happening about last year, so using Xamarin. And the binding is actually extremely efficient. I think we had 1,000 current numbers changing on screen at a given time. It's shooting up on 10 per second. What John is saying is true. If you do it at the collection level, it's going to be very slow. The trick is to actually do it at the cell level. So each object in the collection has that property change, and you send them all that way. So you plan the whole collection, and yes, it's slow. Yeah.
So there's
It all
going
comes
to
in how you do it.
there's going to be efficient and inefficient ways to use it as well. So if you need a just bare metal iOS performance, you might not be even looking at Xamarin in the first place.
So when you say cell, do you mean that so you basically have a collection of objects, and each object can have different properties, right? Each property you change, you basically trigger that change, but you trigger change on all the collection.
So basically, each cell is set up for a whole. What you're saying is basically the change is a much more intensive in the property.
Right. Because that's only that object,
Yeah. So like in this application, this whole, the middle part there is all one list of objects. If you rebound that entire list every time the hours change, which we probably do, Yeah, that would be slower.
So
But
what's happening on this is we make a change, a series of all the time it the entire area actually memory, and then when we make changes to this, certain filters on the rate population report. What happens is that list is not a data source, which usually gets updated when that property changes. And we just hired the data source, we have a policy, we look at it, and touches the whole data. Now, in this case, is like 60 rows, so it's going to be back to where it goes. We're at 10,000, it's good.
I'm in a room full of C# programmers. I have a great question. Data science. What library does everyone use for charts and graphs or data science or whatever you want to call it? C#. I'm just interested.
Three or
Both. I want three.
I like that. I like that visualization. I'm trying to.
Are you trying that?
Accelerated DELDRIQ.
for iOS, there's is a Xamarin component partner. They have a really good iOS graphing library that works with Xamarin. It's pretty good. They have a nice grid and all kinds of stuff. Make a lot of things a lot easier. Yeah, the grid is extremely useful. If you want to do have a grid with a ton of data points in it, we'll definitely look at those controls, the Shinobi controls. Yeah, I like the video game. Ninja. Is that a Ninja Gaiden reference?
That's really just adaptive.
Oh, okay. All right. So this app works on iPad as well. No, it's actually all iPad views. Yeah, is that that's the iPad view? I don't know. At least the scrolling works now.
Yeah. That was very much like the
Yeah, I don't know why the iPhone app is showing up in the iPad view, but yeah. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Nope. All right. Well, thank you guys for your time. Okay. So thank you for coming. Our next meeting is when? August 14th, something like that? August 14th. Windows, Azure Mobile Services, and Xamarin. So hope to see you guys there.